Fragile as I was, I trembled with life. As I lay down, gazing at the stars, I thought about the people being massacred in the war. I thought about what will happen to us tomorrow. Suddenly, a mosquito bit my cheek. I quickly sat up and slapped it off my cheek. Then I noticed I was crying. My tears wet the back of my neck and t-shirt as I lay on the mattress. Then the thought of Hitcham came to my mind. Hitcham was half Moroccan and half French artist who I befriended in Kudos. From the moment I saw him, I thought he was gorgeous. I thought about him being with me under the stars, keeping me company in this frightening war. Hitcham was a shy, sweet boy. He was 4 years older than me, and he had the most beautiful crystal eyes. The thought of him calmed me down. I was too shy talking to him at first. I also appeared too rude and cocky talking to him. As I was confused with the direction of my life, I did not work on building a good relationship with him. I had everything going downhill for me. I did not care if one more thing went downhill with the rest. I wished he opened up to me and take the pain I had inside me. Like the war happened 30 kilometers away, I was fleeing the questioning and harassments of my family in London. I reached a point where I needed to go away and take a break from this mind-draining situation. I didn't care where. I agreed to a family proposal to go back to Somalia for a month or two. I agreed. In a way, I was glad that I was going back to the place I was born. I missed it, really. I blamed London for my troubles, such as drinking, being gay, and drugs, which I tried but never hooked on. My mother cried nearly every night while my father shouted and tried to strangle me. My brothers stayed distant and my sister felt bitter. This was simply part of growing up. I was growing up further away from my family as my life slowly slipped into London underground world. I did not want this to happen, but it was happening. I never slept a night away from my family before, but I was fading into the distant world completely new to me. I was all alone and needed to be far away from this new world. I heard stories of people going back to Somalia for holiday, proposed by their family, but never returning. I kept my passport and memorized my passport number. I made several photocopies and wrote the details on notebooks. My thinking was, if ever my mother took my passport away from me, then I could travel to Djibouti or Ethiopia and pass my details to the British Embassy. There was no one to trust. Why am I causing myself this pain? Why could I not get married to my cousin arranged by my family without my presence? I did not want that, that is why. I wanted to be with someone like Hitcham. I could not sleep. I needed to find a solution for myself. Why did I get into this situation? Why do I have to be stubborn? Why could I not be like my other brothers, or those admired by people? From childhood I expected high of myself. I'm hardworking, kind, and caring. I'm a survivor and a reasonable person. I was the favorite of my parents and my teachers. I always was the perfect example, but it's not happening for me. Everything suddenly changed since I started looking to meet other boys. Was this a teething problem that will correct itself later? Maybe I am feeling guilty that I should not enjoy myself. I should be punished because of my dirty thoughts of having feelings for other boys. It's the guilty of not meeting the expectations of my family when it comes to marriage. Apart from this, I'm well liked in all other areas of my life. But this has let everything else to go downhill with it. Dropping out of university is one of it. Homosexuality has no room in my household, nor does it have in all straight communities. But some are ready to accept it than others. Nevertheless, with the entire world against me, I continue trembling with life. Coming back to Somalia after a long time was so exciting. I kissed the ground as I got off the plane on the dusty runway. It was exciting and I was enjoying up to the first 2 weeks until the war began between two rival warlords. It was traumatizing. It reminded me of the first civil war when I was 9 years of age. The sound of gunfire and explosions has distressed me and added onto my previous confusion. Surprisingly, I still preferred this war than to the one at home in London. Although I hated the scream of children and women who were shelled. I stayed with my uncle, who's the managing director of Al Barakat, a $1 trillion telecommunication company. Unlike other businessmen in the city, he was involved in politics, and as a result, it was dangerous for me to stay with him. My uncle flew to Dubai in emergency when the opponent warlord got closer to the city outskirt, while I stayed with my dear grandma. After fleeing the city with my grandma, the house I stayed with my uncle has been shelled down to the ground. We left in the afternoon before the opponent warlord smashed the city's defense and broadcast on his pro radio, "He will teach a lesson to remember the terrorists in this city." He promised to turn every stone and smoke them out. A direct quote from George Bush, I thought, as it was just a time when the Twin Towers were attacked. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of roosters and other birds. The camp was full of families fleeing the war. My auntie was making pancakes. My grandma was buffing the fire where a kettle lay on top of 3 stones. My grandma greeted me as she saw me approach the fire. She gave me a twig to brush my teeth with and said the tea will be ready soon. I quickly headed towards the hill where we sat on last night and went to find a private place to eat. There was warm humidity in the air. The women in the camp complained about heat in the night. I came down from the hill and went into one of the wells to have a bath. I noticed there were other young boys who were my age. I was wearing shorts that I bought in Eaton Centre in Toronto and YSL netted vest. As I entered the water, all the boys started to look at me. I haven't spoken with anyone of my age for 2 days, apart from those on their way to the gum in the mountains. They were discussing the war and how the city fought back the humiliating warlord and how he has been pushed out of the city. They were saying how the women in the city slaughtered the wounded of the enemy, and one woman had a head of an enemy soldier on her rifle. I asked them when it was safe to go back. They looked at me and laughed. They asked me if I was a city boy and where I came from. I told them I lived in London and I am here for a holiday. They started to be interested and wanted to know more about England. But I was interested in the war. I started to ask questions such as who were the warlords, as I was not familiar with them. They thought I was dumb. I continued to bathe as the boys splashed water on each other and swam competing with each other. I watched. I didn't feel lonely anymore. Then they started climbing the date trees and jumping into the water, making big splashes. One of them invited me to join. I recently learned to swim with my brothers in London. I agreed to join and did my best to float and dive deep into the pool. He came over again and said, "Let's get away from these kids." I sheepishly agreed and we got out of the water. As we stood out of the pool, I noticed he had other intentions, as he wore polyester swimming trunks that was cream in colour and tight when soaked with the water. I had a feeling of excitement that came over me. As we walked towards one of the other pools, Grandma called for me to have breakfast. I excused myself from the boy, who only now we asked each other's names. Not asking someone's name initially, I only thought this happened in Kudos or other places I went in London. He introduced himself as Muggan. I invited him for breakfast. I had my breakfast with Muggan, enjoying every moment of the time. I don't know if the people in the camp understood what was happening between us. Surely we were gazing at each other and sending out flirtatious signals to one another. Muggan was 2 years younger than me. He was a bit taller, but very slim, although muscular at the same time. He was a very dark colour that was smooth and shiny. He had bony European features and beautiful eyes. He spoke firm and caring, as well as flirtatious. He walked gentle and proud with a bit of arrogance. My grandma came over to us and greeted Muggan. Only now I understood he was the son of the family who looked after the waters and the date trees. This was his home. We were refugees, not him. He was glad that we were here as the oasis was in a remote area far from the city. He told me he walked every Thursday, which is when weekend starts in Somalia, from the city to the oasis on foot. The very reason he looked athletic build, I guessed. He enjoyed studies and wanted to become a pharmacist. I was surprised how much organic chemistry he knew in English, which was A-level equivalent. Sadly, he will not have the opportunity I had in England to work for companies. Suddenly, I felt guilty about dropping out of university over stupid things like worrying about boys, if the family found out about me. To be continued. That is the end of this post, titled Tears of the Horn, posted by Hargal.